This is a tutorial for how to extract Mordhau assets and use them in Blender. What you'll need is a program called UModel, which is used to view and export the assets into a usable format. You'll then import these files into Blender using a plugin, as the file type you will be exporting into Blender isn't supported natively. So the first thing you want to do is download UModel and open up its directory folder, which is the folder that houses the .exe file for the program. Then you'll want to download and drop into said directory a special version of Mordhau, and then run that exe. This is because patch 21 of Mordhau introduced some funky stuff into its files that the base version of UModel didn't like very much. Though after patch 22 dropped, there were some special shaders, which UModel can't deal with either. This means that we'll have to be selective about what we can export, and there might be some trial and error in doing so. With a UModel, you need to set two parameters before you can start extracting: the game's directory and the version of Unreal Engine the game uses. First, to get the game's directory, you open your Steam library, right-click on Mordhau and select Manage, and then browse local files. Within the File Explorer window that you just opened, you'll want to copy and paste the file path into the first box in UModel. Next, the game runs on Unreal Engine 4.25, so to select that you'll want to click Override Game Detection and select UE4 and then 4.25. That's all of the parameters set, so press OK and open up all the assets. There should be a bunch of folder trees open, but the only one we're worried about is the game folder, and within that is the folder called UME, and also another folder inside Mordhau, then assets called weapons. Within these two folders are all of the armor and weapons as well as the general character stuff. Within the assets folder that the weapons folder is in are also a bunch of other miscellaneous assets. Before we extract these though, we'll want to set the correct parameters for extracting. So if you click on the Tools button on the drop-down menu, and then Options, it should bring you straight to the export options. Here you can set your export path, mesh types, and texture types. You'll want to set both drop-downs for the mesh to be GLTF 2.0 and texture export as PNGs. You'll want the Don't Overwrite Already Exported Files button ticked, and no other checkbox is active. Once you've set all these, click OK. The next thing we'll now do is actually export the files, and to do this you'll just need to select either the UMA or weapons folder I talked about previously, right click on them and select Export Folder Content. The export settings menu may pop up again, just click OK, but you can double check your export settings were saved if you want. It'll take a few minutes to export, and then you can select the other folder and do the same. That should be it for exporting if you've done everything correctly. To import assets into Blender, you'll need to install a plugin that allows us to import the GLTF 2.0 files we've extracted. To install this plugin, first download it, and then in Blender, click on Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and then finally Install. You'll then need to locate the Python file you installed and select that. Then within the Add-ons window, search GLTF and make sure the add-on is ticked. Next thing is to actually import the files into Blender. To do this, I would recommend having a File Explorer window open on the assets you just extracted. For this example, I've got the file location for all the Armets already opened up on the side, which will later allow me to just drag in the textures onto the model itself. To import the model, press the Import button and select GLTF 2.0 format. You can then copy and paste the file path from the File Explorer window you have open on the side, which you can then select your desired model from. One important thing to note is that the imported models come with skeletons, so whilst you're creating an armor set, or something like that, delete every skeleton after you import a model, apart from the last model you import, in which case keep the skeleton so that you can parent the armor pieces to that. Next you want to open up the material editor and delete all the nodes apart from the material output node. Now we're going to append the Armor Master node group that I've made into the scene. To do this, download the armormaster.blend file into somewhere that you can keep coming back to whenever you start a new project that needs it. To add the Armor Master node group into our current scene though, you'll need to click on File, Append, and then find the armormaster.blend file you downloaded. Double click on that and then go into the node tree file and select Armor Master and click Append. Within your material editor space you can now press Shift and A, search for the Armor Master node and add it and plug the output node into the material output. Set the viewport to material view, and then you can drag in the textures you need for the material. They're all named accordingly and come in the order you find them alphabetically. Sometimes the color IDs will be in a separate folder, so you just go in there and grab them after the albedo and then continue on as normal. An important thing that isn't shown in this example is the alpha map, which is part of the RMA texture, roughness, metal, and alpha, from the alpha channel. which you plug into its according space in the Arma master node. There are now some controls on this node which you can edit yourself. These are the 3 colors and roughness and grunge sliders. The color selection edits color in the same way you would in Mordhau, with color 1 and 2 being the primary and secondary colors and color 3 being the metal tint. Roughness adds a clamp to the maximum smoothness the material can have, which is how it works in game 2. Grunge, on the other hand, is something I've implemented myself and affects the roughness and adds a bump map, which creates surface imperfections on the metal. I'd recommend you set the roughness somewhere between 0 and 0.2 and the grunge between 0.1 to 0.5, depending on how worn you want your material to be. I'm going to make an example and then show you how to parent the model to its rig. Now you should have been deleting all the excess skeletons and kept the last one you imported. Select this skeleton and go to the armature settings, click viewport display and select show in front. This will just make it easier to pose and edit in a moment. Press A to select everything and make sure that the skeleton is yellow. This means it's the parent selection and is very important when parenting objects. Next, right click and select parent, then armature deform. You should now have a skeleton to work with. You can pose the character to however you want. For importing weapons, the same can be done, just make sure to merge all of the separate parts of the weapon together before posing. The weapons also have blood masks, which can be utilized by separating the textures into its red, green and blue channel, and using one as a factor in a shader mix node, with the new shader using the old textures, but making it red to look like blood. Well, that should be all the basics. I'm not going to coddle you if you can't figure anything out yourselves. You can stop asking for a tutorial now. Bye.